Well, what if I said to you that lower resolution on a sensor is better for video? Well, just bear with me because listen to my argument here, right? Now, if we look at a camera like the C70 that's 4K, but it's 4K maximum, it only has a 8.3 megapixel sensor, right? And you go, yeah, but there's better cameras than the C70. But is there really? If you look at a lot of cameras, even with the new C80 that's come out, a lot of people are still disappointed with the newer cameras because the C70 has a DGO sensor and it produces very good dynamic range, and you can shoot in RAW onto an SD card. Okay? So we're getting the maximum amount of color depth and information, even though it's a small sensor, and we can actually record that onto an SD card. We don't need any fancy cards because the sensor is not trying to process so many bits of information from a massively big sensor. So as the sensor gets bigger, we need to compromise on color depth and the raw information, right? Because the processor limits the amount of information, the throughput information. So when we go to 24 or 50, we have a lot of megapixels to process for every single frame to go through the processor and be recorded onto the card, and you produce a lot of heat. But if we make the sensor smaller, then we can actually make the actual resolution information less, but we can increase the bit depth and keep the file size smaller. So we can actually get more dynamic range. We can get, instead of 10-bit, we can get 12-bit, and we can shoot RAW, and we can do it on just normal SD cards. Now, a lot of people sort of use the default reference as resolution to represent quality. Like, if it's 10K, 4K is better than 4K, and 6K is better than 4K. But I tend to disagree with that because with video, it's not like a photo, right? Because you have movement and you have motion blur. And especially if you're shooting in 24 frames per second, you actually get a really lot of motion blur. And even just moving my head like this, you can actually see it losing focus. So this insane obsession with resolution is really making it harder for us and making our cameras more expensive, making it harder to keep them cool, and we're having this constant heat problem. Now, if I look at this camera here, this is the Lumix S5 II. Now, this does 6K, and it only does open gate in 6K 30. But when you shoot in 6K 30, it's only 420. It's not 422. But if I go down to 1080p, I get 422. So my color depth, my color depth information is actually better. So I'm actually sacrificing resolution for color density because I'm getting, my processor is the same process. It can only process so much information, but I'm trading the 422 to 420 for 6K because I'm getting more resolution, and the battery goes out down quicker, and it gets hotter, and so you're sacrificing. So if we had cameras more like the C70, right, that had smaller sensors, because let's be real, for normal social media, 4K is enough. We don't need more than 4K. And we went down to a much smaller sensor, which is 8.3 megapixels, right, which is very small. And we concentrate more on color depth and bit depth, and we can then have cameras that can shoot in higher frame rates and still maintain the quality because the processors can handle it and the cards can handle it. So guys, what's your thoughts? Do you think we're going the wrong way? Do you think that all this chasing of resolution is really not helping us get the best image? Well, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I do think so.